Hello, good morning everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Coronavirus, You Cannot Defeat Marketing. My name is Mahnoor, I'm the Marketing Communications Manager at xiQ, and I'll be your host for today. We are all witnessing major business slowdown caused by the global coronavirus pandemic. Business events and face-to-face meetings have been canceled, creating uncertainties in Q1 outcomes and threatening fiscal forecasts that fuel the engine of business. As the world scrambles to make sense of and respond to the coronavirus threat, the way we market and sell is going to be tested in unimaginable ways. It is imperative that we re-examine our go-to market strategies and innovate on how we connect and communicate with our clients and prospects. xiQ, a leading provider of AI-based B2B sales and marketing platform, is sponsoring today's panel discussion made up of marketing innovators, thought leaders, and academicians. Our goal is to bring to the forefront how these sales and marketing leaders are approaching the monumental challenges and the strategies and tools they're adopting to swiftly adjust to the new normal. Our revered group of panelists include Özlem Yilmaz, financial services and industry marketing expert from Nutanix, Steve So, founder of Cyber Business Review and custom ABM expert, Dr. Howard Dover, Director of the Center for Professional Sales at the University of Texas at Dallas, and Usman Sheikh, founder and CEO of xiQ. A few preliminaries before we begin. We'd love to hear from you during today's presentation. If you have a question, please feel free to send it through the Q&A channel at the bottom of your player. We'll be answering your question at the end of the session. Today's webinar will be available on demand after the live session and is accessible through registering on the website. Lastly, we'd encourage you to share this webinar with your social networks. Without further ado, I'd like to kick things off by welcoming our panelists and handing it over to Usman. Welcome all, and over to you, Usman.
Thank you very much, Manur. And again, welcome to all the panelists. Welcome to all the entire audience that's here. We're very happy and pleased to have you on board. This is a very important topic for us. And over the last week, as a result of this pandemic, we've seen an extreme surge in demand and calls coming into our office asking about all the changes and the impact that this pandemic is causing on business, on marketeers, on sellers, and B2B sales. And not only have we been fortunate enough to have a lot of new orders that were placed, we are also experiencing a lot of questions that are coming through in terms of how to adjust strategies, how to adjust go-to-market strategies, what are some of the tactics to adopt while the business is in lockdown. And just to kind of summarize how things are taking place, I got this message from a friend of mine. He said that he went to a bathroom at a restaurant. He was very cautious. He washed his hands, opened the door with his elbow, raised the toilet seat with his foot, switched on the water faucet with his tissue, then opened the bathroom door to leave with his elbow. And when he returned to his table, he realized that he had forgot to pull up his pants. So whereas that sounds like a funny story, it's also indicative of how the kind of panic this pandemic has created and the state in which a lot of businesses are today. There's a lot of effort being placed to avoid people have been sent home, events have been canceled. Just to look at this, Adobe canceled its annual summit, Facebook canceled F8 and its global marketing summit in San Francisco, and so did Google. So definitely there's a slowdown in terms of lead generating and events that are taking place. If you move to the next slide, please. Lead generating events that are taking place. And it is also having a devastating impact on economy. Retail sales in China, for example, have already dropped over 20%. Unemployment rates have jumped to 6.2%. Travel industry is expected to lose $820 billion. This is huge. I have friends in this industry and they are sweating blood, to be honest, at this point. And the total cost to global economy so far is $2.7 trillion. So this is very, very significant, very serious. However, what we wanted to do is we wanted to assemble a team of thought leaders, of marketing practitioners, people that are hands-on, they're very experienced, and academians who could come and kind of shed light on what is their perspective. So without much further ado, what I'd like to do is go around the table, around our panel, and have them introduce themselves briefly. And then we'll come back and ask the next question. So let me start with you, Özlem. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing at Nutanix and your company, please.
Great, thanks, Usman. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Usman Yilmaz, Principal Financial Services Industry Marketing at Nutanix. I am responsible for leading the marketing strategy and execution for our strategic accounts. Over the last 20 years, I've led field, industry, product marketing, specializing in ABM at companies like Adobe and AWS. My passion has been, I guess, ultimately over the years, is to be on the front lines, personalizing and articulating value for these companies, currently for Nutanix, for customers and prospects. Nutanix is a global leader in cloud software and hyper-converged infrastructure solutions. We are in the business of making infrastructure invisible so that IT can focus on applications and services that power their business.
Thank you, Özlem. Steve, maybe I can ask you to do an introduction to yourself as well, please.
Sure. Hi there, everybody. My name is Steve So, and I run Cyber Business Review. So we are a marketing company in the cybersecurity space, and our specialty is customized ABM, meaning that we focus on the one-to-ones and the one-to-very-fews and the one-to-few types of activities. And we do that through the creation and the distribution of crowdsourced cyber content. So prior to starting this company, I ran campaigns for Americas for Symantec. And prior to that, I managed field marketing in Canada for Palo Alto Networks and also for Symantec. Thank you so much, Osman, for the invite. I am very happy to be here, and I look forward to the discussion we're about to have.
Yes, and Steve, I've had previous discussions with you on this topic, and I think there's a very fascinating perspective you bring. So looking forward to having that. Dr. Dover, you are a leader in the academic space and sales training and leading and educating future sales people. So maybe just a quick introduction to yourself and what you're doing at University of Texas, Dallas, please.
I'm a professor at the University of Texas at Dallas. We are one of 60 sales centers across the globe that are recognized by the University Sales Center Alliance. And what that means is that we teach sales. There's a specified curriculum within our program at the University of Texas at Dallas. But also that means, because we're in a major market in Dallas, we also hear from a lot of the companies that are looking to hire new talent and are actually in the Dallas area with their headquarters. And so we also do a lot of thought leadership events and have advisory boards that kind of keep us up to date on market trends and their needs in the coming months and years. So,
thank you very much, Dr. Dover. So let me start with the first question, and people in the audience, what we're going to do is we're going to ask a few questions to get the discussion started, and then we're going to open it up to the floor. And please, as Manur suggested earlier, if you have questions, you can always type them in, and we'll try to bring those up and address those as well. So my first question to the panel, and I'll start with you, Özlem, as the first person to respond. How is this pandemic-initiated lockdown impacting your business and your industry?
Sure. I think that it's become even more important to have currently just in the current situation where we're all working from home. I think it's become so important that we have a seamless IT infrastructure. And the industry was trending in this direction previously, but now it's been put into hyper-focus. And I think prior to this, globalization was a major springboard for us, for Nutanix, and now it's so prevalent that IT and line of businesses are testing their entire workflow smartly, and they're stress testing their digital channels as well. So I think this has presented an opportunity for our solutions, desktop as a service and VDI, It's time, I think right now it's a great opportunity for us to focus on relationships, not necessarily just the revenue, but so right now we're in close contact with customer crisis teams and ready to help.
Thank you. Stephen, same question. What are you noticing in your business and across the industry?
So I work with top tier cybersecurity companies, and also I still have a lot of contacts in that field. And what I've been hearing from them is that we're sort of in the last weeks of Q1, and depending on where you loaded your events in Q1, some of your Q1 numbers may or may not have been drastically affected. But I know that, for example, all of the Q2 activities are at risk. Like April is gone, May likely gone, and June is a very, very big question mark. And so what that ends up happening is that you're going to put a lot of stress into your pipeline figures into Q3 and Q4. And so companies are still trying to figure out what to do with those last 2 quarters, because we don't even know when this thing's going to pass, right? There have been talks about it passing in weeks. There have been talks about it lasting 18 months. I think I heard the German chancellor yesterday talking about that this thing could last all the way into next year. In which case, the conversation we're about to have will be very different than the conversation we will have in, say, 6 months' time. So, short-term effects, pipeline will be massively affected. And what companies are trying to figure out now is, how do we fill that void, or do we need to pivot somehow and maybe change the goals that we're having, rather than just getting pipeline? Is there something else we should be focusing on?
Thank you. Dr. Dover, what are you seeing from your perspective as a professor and being an advisor to many, many companies?
So I'll answer in two components, because one of them is the academic space. So most universities have gone online, including the University of Texas at Dallas will wrap up the semester 100% online. So our campus is to non-essential employees and students who don't need to be on campus. They've been asked to be at home, and this is pretty common across the university environments that I'm seeing, that education's going online. From a company perspective, I think what's interesting to us is several of our partners, as we moved into 2020, were already on kind of a wait and see. And so we were seeing freezing back in early 2020 for early level hires. And then I think this has exacerbated things. So we're seeing a bit of a pullback on entry level hire. And then I think it just depends on industry. The more conversations I'm having, I think we're seeing kind of a tale of 2 cities. And so it's very interesting to see the different groups that are in trouble and the different groups that are actually in an expansion mode.
Maybe just double clicking on that. So if you can highlight, like, where are you seeing the expansion modes and where are you seeing trouble? Is it simply a matter of how people are kind of attacking or addressing this challenge, or is it a mind frame issue, or is it really the shutdown is breaking the economics of doing business?
So I've had conversations over the last 48 hours with several SaaS CEOs, including you, and what I find fascinating is that anything related to work at home, efficiency, the ability to do things more efficient with, and really this concept of combining. I mean, of course we have Zoom, right? I mean, Zoom and WebEx, RingCentral, anything that provides video conferencing is on the rise, and they can't, demand's amazing. But what I thought was interesting is some of the software as a service vendors who are in the sales tech stack. If your sales tech stack application is going to enhance the ability to work at home, or even for managers to have visibility at home. So, conversation intelligence, interestingly, is on an uptick, because when you think about a sales floor, and now we all went home, that sales manager used to be able to just walk the floor and touch the 10 people. So I know Roy over at Chorus was telling me that, they're up, because now all of a sudden the manager has to be able to do the effect of walking the floor, but has to do it with AI tools instead of live. So that's Now that's fascinating. Anything that allows you to better feel and manage and lead an organization in a virtual space is on an uptick, which is fascinating. I mean, Zoom made sense, but these other things also make sense.
Right. Thank you very much. Özlem, how is this affecting your Q2 and beyond forecast? I know Steve talked about it. He had a perspective. What are you experiencing in your business? And maybe across the industry, not specifically at Nutanix, but across the industry. You're a veteran in the industry. What are you and your colleagues and your friends telling you?
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of how this is affecting current quarters and future. In a world that's changing every day, we're constantly reevaluating our forecasts like any responsible company. So, I think this is just kind of more of a forced opportunity, I guess, if you will. And there's no way of telling, where this will fall out. But what I can say is that our team has been evaluating the current market conditions as a strong opportunity, because we do believe that we have a strong value proposition for our customers. Our marketing team has been working tirelessly to develop new tactics and strategies to get our story in front of those who can benefit most from our solutions. I think that there is a redirect, although, online channels have always been a part of our mix, but I think right now it presents even an opportunity just to kind of really focus in on those channels and just get even closer to those customers and be timely and relevant. So so I think our team is working, is been working around the clock, doing great things, trying to redirect our focus, I think that's really kind of the situation that most of us are in right now. So, I think Nutanix is in a great place right now. I think we're trying really hard to align to that, opportunity, and not just, like I said, about revenue, but just really focus on those relationships as an opportunity to really, really strengthen those relationships. I feel very privileged to be working with a very dynamic, fast-moving management team. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Steve, let me ask you this. In this time when events have disappeared, face-to-face meetings have been canceled, very difficult to get through to people, what are some of the ideas? What are some of the what would be your advice to this audience in terms of how should we overcome this? What would be different ways of retooling or looking at your go-to-market strategy? And that's a question to all of you folks. I'll come back to all of you. But Steve, let me start with you and ask you, how do you see and what is your advice on how to overcome some of these loss of leads due to cancellation of events and in-person meetings?
So I think the cornerstone of all of that has to be empathy. And what I mean by that is try to understand what our clients are actually getting on the day-to-day. And you have to understand, in my world, I sell to the CIO and the CISO, right? Currently, right now, I'm sure a lot of them are frantically trying to figure out how to get all of their workforce online, right? And on top of that, if we have vendors calling on them every second day, actually, no, every second hour, saying, hey, can I get a meeting from you? Notice, and just using coronavirus as an excuse to reach out to these guys, number one, it's the biggest no-no I think you can do right now. I'm sure I've seen it on my feeds across LinkedIn. I'm sure most of us on this panel and also most of the audience have seen how many backlash comments we've seen from cyber leaders or people, just leadership, saying, hey, do not use the coronavirus as a pitch. I think I saw that from the CIO of Netflix or CTO of Netflix yesterday, saying that came across my feed, amongst others. That was just one of about 6 or 7 of these things. So I think that's the first thing to avoid. Going down, the second point on empathy is I think timing is also important. And what I mean is that, this all kind of just broke loose a couple of days ago. Is it right for us to reach out to customers right now while they're in firefighting mode to try to get a meeting? Maybe wait a little bit. Maybe wait a little bit till things settle down a little bit before we start reaching out. You could have an amazing campaign. You launch it today where they're not listening, it amounts to nothing. But that exact same campaign, when launched at a proper time, will get substantial amplification. So that's the second thing to consider. And the third thing I have to suggest would be to think about the alternate channels of communication that may already exist within your organization. And what I mean by that is, I'm not talking about your demand gen, I'm not talking about your social ads and so forth. I'm talking about the communities that you hopefully have established, such as, for example, user groups, or thought leadership programs that are in place. those are sort of destinations of value or destinations of resource that your clients are actually looking to try to find information on how to better use your product, how others are trying to use your product, and so forth. And that kind of information is valuable to them. So, to companies that have either put those communities or secondary channels, on the side burner, it's really time to just reactivating some of those and get them back on track.
Thank you. Dr. Dover, you have, as a sales innovator, leading, you get a perspective across many, many different solutions, because I know you introduce a lot of next generation AI-based tools to your students. So they'll come out and they're prepared for what's going to happen in a few years when they're graduating. What would be your recommendation? And maybe I ask you to wear more of a sales hat or sales leader hat over here. For our audience that's in B2B sales, what would be, let's say, 2-3 key ideas that you would recommend in terms of how to retool or approach this pandemic and engage with their clients?
Well, I like what Steve said. I think this idea of a meeting, meetings are expensive right now, unless they're not. So I think you've got to be looking at, what am I asking for? If the meeting that you're offering me is within my critical path, you're essential to my life. And, like in Steve's world, if I have a cybersecurity threat, I want a meeting. But if I'm just fine and I'm trying to develop continuity planning, you asking for a meeting is completely tone deaf. And so I think a lot of this is really pulling back and using tools to go in and better understand the communication that's going out. I think a lot of mass communication that has been going out just feels very, very tone deaf. Even some CEO messaging, companies I've never bought from are giving me a CEO message. I could care less about the CEO message from somebody that I'm on their lead list. I do care about the message of the CEO from the American Airlines, where I fly on all the time. So it's kind of interesting, some of the kind of faux pas and tone deaf marketing that's going out right now. Likewise, salespeople, if their leadership aren't kind of pulling back a little bit and understanding how to handle this, the poor salespeople are under maybe activity quotas, or the quotas are still in place. And it's been awkward to ask for a meeting before now, and now it's extremely awkward to ask for a meeting. So I think a lot of this comes down to better communication, targeted communication, relevant communication with context. And so that's rarely, I'm not just going to go through my database and contact people. I am going to use my tools. I'm going to go on LinkedIn. I'm going to go maybe on Twitter feeds. I'm going to go and use AI tools that gather a lot of information, like your tool at xiQ, and I'm going to try and get relevance before I communicate if I'm a salesperson. And maybe I'll be contextual and maybe I'll be potent, as opposed to spray and pray and be irrelevant.
Yeah, let me just also chime into that. That's always been our mantra, which is that personalization and intelligent personalization is the key to winning success. We also promote sales is equal to EQ, equal part EQ, the empathy and the emotional connection that you have to build with your prospective buyers and your clients, as well as IQ, which is what you referred to as the context, the relevance. And the combination of two, when they come together, that's when you really have a winning formula to succeed in B2B sales. What we've been experiencing, and Özlem, you were one of our clients that actually kind of prompted us to hold this webinar. You were one of the first ones reaching out to us. What we've also been experiencing is that as everybody retools, as everybody moves to email and digital marketing, that space is going to become extremely saturated. Dr. Dover just mentioned, he's getting CEO messages that are totally out of context, very tone deaf, and has no relevance to him. And so there's a lot of noise. There's going to be a lot of noise that is going to be created. And so here we see that, the ability to get personal, to be able to have that one-to-one message. Again, don't treat your database as with a broad brushstroke. Really get into segmentation, understanding who the individuals are, and then being able to understand that personality type of that person. How do they like to be communicated? How would they actually view this current situation? And then build messages and syndicated content if you need to, that is going to serve that one purpose, is actually going to help our clients and help you stand out. Özlem, would you like to give us some ideas on what you think would be good tactics for marketeers to deploy at this time?
Yeah, so many great comments from Steve and Howard that the words empathy and genuine are so top of mind for me, and everything that myself and my colleagues are really focusing in on. The other thing is that I think right now, huge opportunity to really get close with sales. This is like an opportunity to really break that, the conflict that's always there with sales and marketing, right? This is huge. I mean, it's something that you can this is a great opportunity for marketing to shine with sales and show value, right? They need us right now. And so, going back to the events piece of it, I think that, sales has traditionally relied on events to build and nurture these relationships, right? I mean, not 100%, but it's a huge component of it when we're working with a lot of these executive engagements, most recently in marketing. That in-person connection is something, there's nothing else that compares to it, right? So I think by using these amazing tools that are available to us that weren't available to us over 15 years ago, right? AI-driven tools like xiQ, intent data, the level of personalization, really getting segmented and focusing in on those online channels like LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a huge, it's very successful for us. I think for many B2B marketers as well. But I think, going back to what Howard said, I think relevance, context, right? Using this time to stop and really gather that information, educate ourselves, really understand the customer, and be timely and relevant. I think right now that's key. I think that's really going to be kind of the determining factor for kind of where we end up landing, right? So I think that's, I think that's it. Being timely and relevant right now, being close to sales, and just, really understanding the importance of all that.
Great, thank you very much. We also have some questions online, and I'd like to maybe, let me just kind of ask a few questions that have come online. So we have a question which is like, you talk about personalized communications, and what are some of the tools and techniques that you would recommend in helping drive that?
So can I take that one?
Please do, please do.
So I've been writing some notes and I just want to drop some data points because I think they're fascinating. When you think about the answer to that question, understanding your environment, just what Özlem said is, there's several things. First thing, LinkedIn put out a report in 2018 that said we had a 580% increase in the number of SDRs in the country. I actually did a follow-up look on the growth in the last 2 years, and we've had a 78% increase in that function in the last 2 years. So if you put that together, we've had 1,000% increase in the number of SDRs. At the same time, we've launched in the sales space, sales engagement platforms that automate all the communication that those SDRs are doing. What has been the result? We've had a massive increase in automated messaging coming through not the marketing side of the fence, but from the sales side of the fence at 10x to 100x in messaging. So Özlem's point is so valid. It's time to bust the silo. You've got to be coordinating over there with the marketing side because your sales side is tooled up and is just ready to go. And those poor 10X SDRs feel they've got to go out and spray every day because that's what they've been asked to do. And I think one of the things to keep in mind is we really like the scale. And scale kind of isn't working for us all. So we're trying to find something to work and then scale it. So I think it really comes back to this thing. When we talk about tools, the danger is we're talking about oftentimes scale. Let's figure out something work and use a tool to scale it. If the strategy wasn't smart to begin with, scaling it actually creates negative behavioral reaction. Now, if you magnify that by what I just said, that thousands of more people are doing bad outreach right now, customers, even on LinkedIn's going to become environmentally dirty because people are going to get frustrated with platforms that don't provide value and are costly because everybody's using it wrong. So this comes back to when you're relevant. What I've been teaching my students this semester is don't ask for a meeting, have a conversation in asymmetric space. Don't be goofy. I had some guy connect with me on Cybercoin and hey, hi, how are you? That's weird, right? I don't know you. I think using things like introductions is a big thing right now. Let's develop our networks. As several people have said, it's time to build stronger ties with people and then work through those ties to assist people who are ready to listen, understanding that there's already, prior to this, we had a huge environmental problem within the sales space where buyers were getting fatigued with bad messaging. So now if we then move, because we can't fill our funnel with events, we're going to now fill our funnel with digital. Sales has already been blowing digital communication out well before marketing is going to run over and do the same thing. So you got to talk to each other.
Okay, perfect. Steve or Özlem, would you like to also address that? And the question, just to kind of remind you, is what are tools and what are pivot strategies to reach prospects? Actually, that was specifically stated in terms of how do you reach prospects and what are you doing in terms of pivot, and Dr. Dover gave a great answer to that. But if you feel like you have something to add to that, please do.
Sure, I can share a couple points here. I think, well, first of all, relevance is obviously very, very important. But I also think the way we use LinkedIn is also very, very important. Now, what we've done in the past with LinkedIn is, we all have connections that we have on LinkedIn that we don't actually really talk to. And then we have connections that we actually do talk to. What about separating those two, to people that we talk, level 1 connections that we actually communicate with regularly versus level 1 connections that we don't communicate with regularly, and having separate messages for those groups, right? And then having a separate message for the people that you're completely prospecting. And I think at the centerpiece of all of that is content that's relevant, content that they want to read. We did a project when I was at Symantec where we created a crowdsourced book. And we use that as a central piece of content that we're able to use on LinkedIn and outside on just regular social as well. And our connection rates on LinkedIn on level 1 level 1 contacts that we don't talk to was over 50%. So if over 50% of the people that I don't normally talk to, when presented with a very, very relevant piece of content, engaged with me, gave me an email, gave me the consent to reach out to them, started a dialogue. Some of them went as far as doing a review of the book for me, which then I used that to create secondary content to put on social. Now we're using them, piggybacking off of their brand, piggybacking off of their network. I think something like that is a different way to look at how we can do some of the marketing nowadays. And also using that same piece of content and reaching out to prospects via personalized messages, not in-mails. I mean, we didn't even have LinkedIn Navigator. We did all this on a freemium version of LinkedIn. And 40% of the people connected with us due to that information, due to the information we were able to provide. And half of them gave us their emails and gave us the consent to reach out and have dialogues with them. So I think we just got to be a little bit smarter in the way we reach out to our customers and not rely on just broad stroke, sort of just mass communication, because this is not the time for that right now. They're getting that from all of your competitors. How you want to differentiate is to be above and beyond. You might not scale up, as Howard talked about. But then again, I think you find that your results would be substantially greater than if you were to scale up.
Yeah, Steve, let me also remind you that when you did that ebook, you also used xiQ as a way of kind of getting the message out. And if you recall, you had over 70+% engagement within that. And so again, just to kind of highlight that when you put context, you put focus, and you personalize the message, you're able to get, and I think subsequently you did quite a few more, and each time, because you were humanizing that interaction, and you were bringing, that's a very key word as well, which is again something that we talk a lot about, and which is how our entire platform is built, is leveraging artificial intelligence to humanize. That's the advantage, Dr. Dover, Steve, and Özlem, that we have today, is that if we use artificial intelligence, we can actually go and do lots of analysis, empathy-based analysis, personality-based analysis, personality type of analysis, response analysis. And so we have now the ability to take a lot of data, analyze it, segment it, and develop personalized messaging. And we, in the pre-pandemic days, we have already seen the results of this, where Steve, you are, as an example, the campaigns that you ran had tremendous human flavor to them. They were coming in a very personalized manner. They were speaking to the individual. They were not broad brushstrokes, broad marketing techniques that were being used. So we already have some proof points, and you've just also further validated how personalization and being able to look at individuals and communicate to them in a very human manner has a very positive upside impact as well. Özlem, anything you'd like to add at this point?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to comment on, it's interesting that LinkedIn keeps coming up, and, LinkedIn is a huge part of our business right now. And I think I think it's important to, this is where the relevance comes and the timing comes into play, is that I think that we just in normal business, normal times, we see such great performance. And we talked about, Steve just talked about just leveraging that network, right? I think, just previously, there's always a little bit awkward, right? Sometimes to just reach out to someone and kind of ask for an introduction and a connection. I think today, right now, I think there's this sense of needing to help one another out. I'm at least getting that sense. There's this genuine need right now, and I think that this could be a really good opportunity to really even kind of get, reap the benefits of that, and just really kind of lean on each other, humanize things, make things more personal, and yeah, I just wanted to touch on that because it's such a big part of our business. So, but
perfect, thank you. Manur, I'm surprised. Time is really running by. We're at 42 minutes past the hour. So let's take one or two more questions, and I'd like to kind of do a quick summary and call it, a day after that. So,
sure, we have a few more questions. You can just direct them to the panel. So here's the first one. How do you think it's best to market without appearing to be an ambulance chaser and trying to capitalize on the crisis going on?
Okay. I think we've answered it a few times, but again, if any of you want to take another stab at that, please do. Steve, Dr. Dover?
I'm going to let Steve, because it was a marketing question.
No, I think it's very simple. I think not being an ambulance chaser is exactly what it is. Just don't be an ambulance chaser. You do not want to chase after your clients when they're in a state of down. And everybody's in a state of down right now. And if we go after them with super irrelevant, just broad stroke messages, how sometimes marketers have this, and we've all made this mistake, right? It's better to do something than to do nothing. I don't know if you guys have heard that. I see Awesome smiling. So obviously we've all heard of it. Whether we've been accused, whether we've actually done it or not, I don't know. But I know I've done it. right? Where it's better to do something rather than do nothing. Well, this is the time to better to do nothing than it is to do something that's bad. Because when you do nothing, you get called out by your customers and they share that negativity with their network. Good luck trying to reach out to those guys again a second, third, fourth time when all this passes. This will pass, right? And when that happens, your credibility is what's most important. I think this is a great opportunity for us to build cred right now, either on a personal sort of professional level and also as a corporation. Once you have cred, you have the right to ask for meetings, you have the right to ask for opinions, you have the right to connect with people. Right now, we haven't earned that right. So stop acting as if you do. I think that's the most important point I have to share with people in regarding to that question.
So
go ahead.
Yeah, you know, I think one of the things to probably put out there is a lot of people probably aren't aware that LinkedIn actually has a penalty box. And if you market as an individual improperly with your account, you can actually enter a very interesting penalty phase of your LinkedIn experience, which begins to restrict your capacity to the point where even you actually get your account locked out. So it's in phases. So as you start moving to LinkedIn as your platform and you don't behave properly and enough people report you, but LinkedIn has algorithms that are actually watching the degree of how much of your outreach is actually responded to versus deleted versus spam foldered. And then they actually, a few years ago, they actually had a reputation score on every user. I don't know if they've maintained that. So I think connect and spam has been on the rise for a while. This is not the time to connect with somebody on LinkedIn and immediately try to proposition them. I think connect and post, right? Connect and post. And then I think the other thing is, you know, your tool, the xiQ tool, or any tool that gives personality insights, why would I communicate with somebody without context of their personality when I can figure that out? So if I need to be pointed and direct, that would help me in an outreach or even in a re-outreach. Or if I need to be really careful and develop rapport. And by the way, if I use the wrong method, it's not 100%, right? I mean, I may miss, but why not use a personality tool? There's yours, there's other ones, but it's interesting with AI tools available to give us context on personality. This would be a time to not only have relevancy, but also personality contextual, so that I at least try not to offend my client as I'm trying to connect.
That's great. You actually answered another question that was on our panel, which was like, you talk about personalizing communication now that face-to-face meetings have been canceled. How do I get to know the personality of my buyer? So I think you just answered that. I have one other question, which is with travel budgets, and this is, I think, really good advice, and we'll jump into kind of summarizing after this. With travel budgets and events being canceled, people are investing in digital marketing tools. When you're selecting a tool, what are some key considerations to take? Key considerations. Özlem, do you want to take a stab at that? So if you're switching off to digital marketing at this time and you're selecting tools because your marketing budgets have been canceled, what would be some key considerations?
I think that, you know, a lot of us actually already have, or maybe not everyone, but, you know, ABM tools. There's a lot of ABM tools that are available that I think allow us to do some pretty amazing things and more automated, I think. Leveraging, you know, intent activity, that traffic, that data, to be able to respond almost real time, right, to online engagement. I think that would be a top priority. But then at the same time, going back to the relationship between sales and marketing and how can I drive immediate value to the sales organization right now? I think that, you know, the AI tool that you offer, I think is pretty on the spot with what sales can immediately start taking advantage of, right? You have information on the individual. I think there's a lot of tools out there that really talk about the company, right? Like information on the company. A lot of that information we have, access to, right? It's all available to us right now. Of course, it takes time to do that, but I think that, having it all real time, AI driven, we know it's off information that's available to us, but it's, pulled together in a great interface. I think that's, those are kind of two priorities for me, because it ties back to the personalization, right? The being timely and relevant on the ABM front. And then, AI tools like, xiQ, I think is, how can I get some big wins with sales right now to help them as we pause and we really understand our customers and our prospects, and how do we engage with them in a more personalized way. I think that's where I would go in terms of priorities.
Thank you. Very insightful and very helpful. Okay, so I think we're coming close to the top of the hour, and if I can request to share the last slide. We've got a couple of summary slides that I'd like to kind of summarize this discussion. If you can please bring them up on the screen. Next slide. There we go. If you can go full slideshow, please, yeah. So what are some of the must-haves for marketing? I think this is also addressing the last question. So what our panel kind of highlighted some of the key things, and we actually put this together by having a few early discussions. So one of the key topics that was kind of unanimously mentioned was intelligent personalization, contextual personalization. So this is very, very important that we are able to establish that empathy and that emotional connection with our partners, with our clients, with our prospects. Second, within that, the ability, agility, speed is of the essence. It takes a long time to kind of move from one channel to another, and it takes a long time to develop good content that is going to become engaging, and within the context of actually developing content, there's a long timeline to actually develop that, and campaign execution. So ability to have good content and leverage third-party content, there's nothing wrong. It actually only validates your value proposition. And it's better that if somebody else is kind of articulating what you do, then you do it yourself. So don't feel shy about leveraging third-party content and leveraging that to explain and provide validation to your value propositions. And then campaign execution. A lot of tools, a lot of marketing automation tools do campaign execution, but very few tools are able to extrapolate intent of your recipients, of your campaign recipients. So looking at intent has to be very, very important, that the tool, when you execute your campaign, it can segment people on the basis of how they've engaged, what they've engaged with, what kind of personality they have, and then intent analysis. And insights, very, very critical. Özlem just mentioned, Dr. Dover just mentioned, personality profiling, the ability to understand and get insights on who the buyer is. And our tool, xiQ, as you may know, has the ability to pull up profiles, AI-generated disc profiles on over 1 billion people. And it happens in less than 3 seconds. Excuse me. And so leveraging those tools to go from absolutely cold to warm or even hot is important, especially in this time of saturated communications, a lot of noise out there. And then again, companies, you do have information on companies, but having it in one location where it can feed you and tell you how what's happening within the company, what's happening in the industry. If you're first to respond and react to that, and if you're able to project that through LinkedIn and other medium, then you will establish yourself as a thought leader, as a subject matter expert, and as a leader, and somebody who knows what's happening. Next slide, please. Just to close off who we are. We are being recognized. We're very proud of the fact that we've been recognized as the #1 account-based marketing platform by our clients. So this is not only just some analysts rating us. Our clients have actually come out and voted on G2, and we've received the highest 5-star ratings for in terms of usability, in terms of customer satisfaction, and we have now been labeled 2 quarters in a row as an ABM high performer on G2. And as you can see, the analysts at IDC are also seeing us as a thought leader and a leader in this space. The purpose of this call, again, not to be tone deaf, was not to talk about us. If we can move to the next slide. We have created a site where you can please go ahead and there it is, xiqinc.com/jumpstart. I'll leave that on the screen for a little bit. And if this will be a place where you can schedule appointments with us. You can get some valuable information. There's 2-minute short videos over there that you can get a better understanding of what xiQ does. With that, what I would like to say is that I thank all my panelists. You've done a wonderful job. Thank you very much for taking the time out. We think this is a very, very valuable and important topic that we wanted to address. And our audience, as you can see, we've had tremendous participation. So it's obviously something very close to the mind of a lot of big company marketing leaders and sales leaders. So thanks a lot for your input and your valuable insights. And to the audience, I hope you find this valuable, and best of luck. Stay safe, everyone. And hopefully we get over this crisis really, really soon. Thanks a lot, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.